Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Beyond the IDE, powered by Soxora. We're all energized today and ready for another exciting session, just like yesterday, maybe even better. So, if you're not feeling too shy, maybe you could turn on your cameras to show a little engagement and support to our lovely Praveen here. I'm Uni, and it's my pleasure to host tonight's event with my co host.
Dhamma. Uh, so, thank you, Vioni. It's great to be here with all of you. And yesterday we explored the tech world. So, today we'll be diving into something just as crucial, not technical skills. As tech enthusiasts and professionals, we know that being an amazing developer isn't just about writing a clean code. It's about honing your communication, leadership, and adaptability skills to truly stand out in this industry.
That's right. So let's get started and learn how these essential skills can shape a successful career. To kick things off, I feel to welcome my esteemed speaker for today, Mr. Praveen Paul, who will be sharing his insights into the non-technical skills that make a world of difference in the tech world.
So basically, in this session, we'll be exploring critical soft skills, including communication, teamwork, and problem solving that can help developers not only thrive in their careers, but also build meaningful collaborations in the workplace. So let's all welcome Mr. Praveen Paul and give him a big virtual round of applause as he takes us through incredibly valuable session. Over to you, Mr. Praveen.
Thank you so much, ladies. Aiboan, Vanakkam, Subathandeva Kweva. It's very nice to be here. Maki Singhala then Isravage ne Godak Balakara Vela. Puluan Taramata Singaling Kata Karanang, 8th, then Mang English at Maru Karana. Okay, so it's been a long time since I left Sri Lanka. I was born in Norelia. A little bit about my background, all of you. Much like all of you, I'm also a Sri Lankan. I was born in the 1980s, unfortunately, when in the darker days of the country, which none of you fortunately experienced, but was brought up in the 1980s, studied in Colombo, St. Thomas's Prep in Kollupitia, did my O-levels there, finished that in 1995, and at the time, everybody left the country because the country wasn't that good. So went from Sri Lanka when I was 15. I left home and went to do my studies in Malaysia. So actually, I did my electrical engineering degree in Malaysia. Of course, it was a big learning experience for me going out of home by myself when I was 15, finding my feet. But the good thing, as I posted on LinkedIn, I hope you guys are on LinkedIn, but as I posted on LinkedIn, being a Sri Lankan makes you tough, right? And I think that's one of the best things that you should be proud of as a Sri Lankan. It makes you survive wherever you go. So I'm proud to say that I am, and it made me who I am today. And if I was born somewhere else, I wouldn't be here probably having this conversation with you. So I'm thankful for having been born in Sri Lanka and also given me the opportunity to get where I am today. So after finishing my electrical engineering degree in Malaysia, I then moved on to work in Singapore for a year and a half. Fortunately for us in Sri Lanka, our level of English is good, right? So many used to question me, why is your English so good? And I go, my second language is English. My first language is Tamil, right? So of course, they found it very surprising that I could speak good English, which is good, right? It's a testament to our country, right? From where we are brought up. And we should show that out proudly to wherever we go and whoever we're with. So after I lost my job in Singapore during the financial crisis in Singapore, this was in 2001, I moved to Australia. So this was in 2001. 2002, I went to Australia. I did my master's in telecommunications and networking. I know that's a mouthful, but yeah, it was just an entry point for me to actually go into a new country and find a new home. So of course, did that for a couple of years, worked part-time, and then basically started my first business when I was 25. and this was in engineering services. So I used to code, not the type of coding you guys do, but it was more programming for programmable logic controllers, SCADA, HMIs. So I was actually a SCADA and HMI programmer. So I like drawing straight lines. I'm not an artist, but if anything that comes across my way and the line isn't straight, it annoys the heck out of me. So because of that background in engineering, I started doing the graphics, right, for all of your processing plants and stuff like that. So built that business up from nothing. I took 3 other guys and started the business, and we did it out of a spare bedroom for about 6 months. Then we moved into a bigger office, which was again a one room in a business center. Then we bought a building next door, and we started growing and growing and growing. So 10 years of my life I did that business, engineering business. Now that engineering business is interesting because all the other 3 guys that I was with were engineers, and all 4 of us being engineers, someone had to do sales. So nobody was willing to do sales because sales is not something a technical person can do. So someone had to do sales, otherwise the business was doomed to fail from the start, right? So this is where I said, okay, I'll do sales. And I started the journey of learning sales. And it was tough being of Sri Lankan origin in a Western country, doing sales when you're 20, 25. It's hard, right? But that, again, I really thank my background, right? And I thank my resilience that I built coming from Sri Lanka. That gave me the strength to do anything that I set my mind to, right? So started doing sales, did some good sales. The first couple of years were hard, but built the business up and got to where we were. I exited that business in 2015 because my family was growing. I had two boys who were born in Australia. Then my third one was on the way, daughter. So we then made the trip back to India, and then commenced my journey in tech, in software, right? So in hotel software. So of course, coming back to India was not easy. Of course, the cultures are vastly different. And I had to learn a lot. I had to learn the culture, not just that, but I had to learn how to manage a tech team and also operations. So this is a company that does software for the hotel industry, property management software, it's called PMS. So again, being a Sri Lankan in India with an Australian background didn't help. So I had to unlearn a lot of things and relearn adaptability, which we'll talk a bit more about today, right? So that business I built up over the period of almost 10 years. So earlier this year, that business was acquired. During my time at the business, I quadrupled the revenue. I tripled the install base. Took the business from one level. It had 7 or 8 countries that the business was in. When I exited, the business was in 30 odd countries. So it's been an amazing journey, and I thank God for the fact that, of course, I was able to endure it and get to this stage and come and talk to you about it. And I want you all to draw inspiration from me, because this can be your future, right? This can be who you are. And because you were born in our beautiful country, this is what you can achieve if you really set your mind to it. So enough about me. I'll talk a little bit more about now what I think, based on my now so many years of experience. I've worked in tech. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've survived meetings that should have been emails. But I'm here to talk about these weird, annoying things that basically, technical, non-technical stuff that is so important for your career, right? So I'm sorry if you came expecting a detailed Kubernetes breakdown. If you did, now is the time for you to fake your Wi-Fi dropout and exit the meeting, right? So I'm 45, right? So that makes me sort of in between like a millennial and Gen X. So I'm on sort of like to call it a millennial on a sabbatical from Gen X, because I'm like in that borderline, right? So I come from a time, obviously, when phones never used to take selfies, right? And those days when we used to download music off the internet, we used to thought our computers would get infected with a disease, right? So this is how far back, things were when I was what I am. So here you're studying technical, you're doing technical education, many of you, and you're pursuing technical education. It's awesome. But I don't want, I'm here to sort of ruin the surprise and tell you that, getting a job and a career is not about writing code, right? That is probably the least on the list of things that will make you successful in your career. You'll have to communicate very clearly. You'll have to handle feedback without throwing a chair through a window, and still progress where you need to go in your career, right? So I'm going to try and give you some pointers. I'm going to try not to talk too much. So just to kick things off, I'm going to start with a bit of interaction from you guys. Now, it's something that you need to participate for me to make this interesting for you. So we're just going to do a small icebreaker to start with. So this tool called Menti that I actually used before in presentations. All you really have to do is use your phone and scan this QR code, right? When you scan this QR code, you're going to actually just get a website pop up. Now, I want each of you to tell me what you think your superpower is. So it's just a quick something, type it in, put it through. It's anonymized. I don't know who's sending what. So just put it in, and I'd like some interactions. All of you, maybe both of you beautiful ladies can help me get them up and going. Muni, Nahamia, yep, you guys can start first, but I'd like to see more. Great, awesome. Patience is your superpower. Wow, amazing. Really like to see more. Adaptability, great. I mentioned that in the start. So let the cat out of the bag. But keen to see more. Guys, come on, let's make it interactive, right? I think this whole session is going to be that way. And how can I teach you non-technical skills by not making you invisibility? Like that. Nice. Patience, again, connections. Very good, guys. A lot of hands. Very nice. Thank you so much. This is nice to see this. Resilience, teamwork, right? It's so nice. So nice to see you all. Attract girls. Thank you for your honesty. Yeah, this is what I like about doing a session like this. It's fun. It's memorable, right? Learning things fast. Very good. Thank you so much. Effective strategy. That's an interesting one. So yeah, while you're doing that, it's just something to get you thinking a little bit. Now we're going to do a few more questions that I'd like to ask you and get your feedback, just to gauge, what your non-technical side of you is like, right? So thank you so much for that. Love the attract girls. All right. So now the next question. So if you actually just go to the next question on your phone, you'll actually see answers to this. So now what is scary to you? Is it writing a cover letter? Is it speaking in a meeting? Is it merging code you didn't write? Or is it small talk with a senior developer? Right? Like in your view, what is scary? So it's good to see that. So of course, being programmers, it's all about merging code. Good to see both speaking in a meeting, small talk. Interesting. Nobody's scared about writing a cover letter. That's very interesting. I find that very interesting. Oh, I love your confidence. Speaking in a meeting. Keep going. Good. I have 50 people on this, so I should be seeing 50 responses, please. Right? I've only got like 11 so far. 12. Good. Come on, more.
If you have missed the barcode, guys, maybe you could go on like in the website and you can type in that code, right? Just in case maybe they have missed.
So if you missed the QR code, you can just go to menti.com and type in that code on the screen, 89757189. So for those of you who've just joined us, yeah, I'd love to get your feedback. What scares you? So it seems like the majority of you are scared about the code, right? Or scared about the code element of things, merging code that you didn't write. Of course, interesting. Thank you very much. All right, I've got another one. How do you handle feedback? Like when someone is giving you feedback about something. Do you cry? Do you pretend that you understand? Do you deflect and blame Jira? Of course, I think that's going to be very common. How do you take it like a champ? Not immediately. Obviously, it's never easy to take it as a champ in the start, but eventually you would take it like a champ. Good, good, good. Be honest. Be honest. Be honest. Don't just say what you think the others would say. Like I never used to take things as a champ when I was your age. But no way, right? I never used to cry, but I used to pretend that I understand. That's what I used to do, right? Like or blame someone else. I think that's the usual two scenes that I used to do when I was your age. So so many of you taking it like champs. I'm amazed. Thank you. It's really nice to see that, right? Like it's good to be able to handle feedback that way. Okay, one last one before we get in. But it's good to know that there is a mix, right? The pretending part, also the deflecting part, the crying part. Of course, it's totally normal at your age to cry about things. Even at my age, sometimes. Okay, so last one. Have you ever used ChatGPT to fix your code and pretend it was your idea? All right, good. Yes. Nice, guys. So, those of you who've just joined or would like to participate, just join Menti. Just go to menti.com and put that code in at the top of the screen. You should get this prompt. Please choose interact. This is all about interaction. This is one of the things that I'm going to be talking a bit more about, the interaction part. So would love you all to participate, get into it, right? And this is, again, I'm not asking you to speak, just click some buttons. So thank you so much. Yep. Happy to know that a lot of you are cheaters. No, I was just kidding. But it's good to know that, you use ChatGPT and of course do things with it. So thank you. It was a good little icebreaker session to warm things up. To get back to the presentation. So why this topic, right? So I thought this was tough because the first time Nilan came to me and said, "Hey, can you talk about something?" Of course, the top of the listing was AI, right? Like because every man and his dog is talking about AI now, I should talk about AI. But no, like for me, I think one of the things for me that shaped my career was the fact that I learned that it wasn't all about the code, right? So technical skills get you hired, right? Like definitely technical skills get you hired. Soft skills get you what? I would like to get some input from you. What do you think soft skills get you? If you're too shy to say anything, please feel free to type it in the chat. I'll keep the chat open as well.
Is it promotions?
Promotions, exactly. So technical skills get you in the door, right? But of course, the most important thing that soft skills do is take you from one level to the next level. And that's the reason why we have to give such a big importance to the soft skills aspect of things, and us the ability to develop those soft skills as well, right? So 9 out of the 10. Now, if you go to the World Economic Forum site, I'm sure a lot of you would have done that or would know what it is, right? If you look at WF's top 10 skills, only one of them is technical, right? So after that huge amount of research that they've done, they've quantified the top 10 skills that you need to acquire or anybody should have. And only one is technical, right? So it's quite important to note that a lot of the skills that you learn, or majority of the skills that you learn, are not technical. They should be non-technical, right? So just some stats to give you something to think about, that I'm not here talking about this because it's not important. I'm talking about this because even the WEF finds it important, right? Now, great communication beats code any time of the day, right? When it comes to working with people. And let's be honest, this is not an isolated job. You don't sit in one place. Of course, a lot of you do sit in one place and code, but you can be a lot more effective at what you do and be a lot more better at what you do by communicating better, right? And it's more important to understand the importance of working with others and the communication aspect of things. So great communication is any day going to trump how good you are with your code. Now, just a little bit of fun there in the end there. Each of my slides will have a little quirk like this that would actually try to keep you going, but you might ace your data structures exam. But if I ask one of you to structure a group chat, will you be able to do that without causing complete chaos, right? So it's not just about learning structure and also doing the code part, but also being able to marry that with the communications, the non-technical element. So the first thing, of course, seems pretty obvious, right? The most important thing that we need to look at to start with is collaboration, right? How do we collaborate more effectively with each other when we're actually out and about doing what we need to do in the technical world, right? So number one, working effectively in a team, right? So a lot of you actually work in teams for your assignments. How do your team works? Now I've got a nice quirk that'll come here at the end, which will totally relate to a lot of your projects, but I'll leave that till the end of this slide. But how effectively, just something to think about, food for thought. How effective are you at working in a team? Do you think you're a team player? Now, while I'm speaking, I would like, if you guys have any comments, just feel free to drop it in the chat. What I'm going to do is, as I go along, if I see comments come in, I will pause and actually respond to what you have. So I want to make it interactive. This is not a lecture. This is not something that should be one-sided. The whole idea with me doing this was to get you to also open up, right? Ask me questions. Give me your thoughts. This is how I think. This is how I feel. Maybe what I'm saying doesn't make any sense to you whatsoever, and you think that it won't help you. That's also fine, right? But voice your opinion. Voice your opinion. Get it. And that's the whole idea with the non-technical part, is the ability to articulate things, the ability to speak more and communicate what's inside of you instead of just letting it sit inside of you, right? So of course, working effectively in a team, that's the most important thing when it comes to collaboration. Now, of course, building strong relationships with your colleagues and stakeholders, right? Like how effective are you at building relationships with people in your class, in university, in each of the things that you actually do. I'm just going to put my phone on do not disturb because it's pinging away. All right. So each of the classes that you go to, how effective are you at communicating face to face? Now, when I mean communicating, it's not just communicating via text or communicating like, in a situation like this where you're just listening, right? That's not communicating. Communicating is when two people speak, right, to each other. And we're going to get to the communication part because that's also a very crucial element. So how do you go about building strong relationships, right? And this is, of course, all to do with collaboration. Now, giving credit. Now, how many of you actually go about sharing what you know, right? Sure, you've learned a lot of things, but there is this adverse thing about people sharing what they know, right? Because they feel the other person's going to benefit more, or the other person is going to take a step above them, or this worry of being able to share more and acknowledge and give credit to others. And this is all a big part of collaboration. When you're doing a team project, basically when someone does a good job, acknowledging it, telling them, hey, you did a great job today, right? Your code was brilliant. The way that you thought about and executed your section of the project really showed that you had a different level of thinking. So it's just your communication, giving credit for someone. And you all know what it feels like when someone talks, gives you credit for what you do. It makes you feel great on the inside, right? So it's about not just receiving it, but it's also giving it out or dishing it out as much as you can. And the more knowledgeable you are to others, the better that your knowledge improves too, right? So it's sharing doesn't mean that your knowledge doesn't improve. It's going to keep improving the more you share. So it's very important to tie those two things in together, sharing what you know, and then basically giving credit for others who actually do stuff. So group project, typically one person's coding, one person is completely, basically ghosted the group project. And then you have the rest who are just vibing in Notion, right? So it's a typical situation, not just in university, but that happens even in a lot of the real life scenarios, right? Where group projects are executed. It's usually one person who does all the work, right? So that collaboration part, working together, working more closely together, is certainly something that is quite important. I can see some crying faces there. I'm sure those are the ones that were doing all the work. But yeah, so it's something to think about. How do you get that collaboration happening, right? Number two, of course, communication. We already touched on this a bit earlier, but yeah, clearly conveying information, but not just technical stuff. I notice in my entire career, starting from Australia, when I meet technical guys, they throw out a lot of jargon. For some reason, they seem to think that the more jargon they throw out, the better they look or the better they seem to others, right? So they start mumbling all sorts of acronyms, which of course they're not conscious of the fact that the room is not full of everybody from that language, right? Or from that, like how many people would know what a pojo means, right? So things like this, right? Except for you guys, a lot of you would know what that is, but when you're actually in an environment and you're actually communicating, all never use acronyms. So I often tell most of the team members that I'm working with, even if it's a development teammate, there you go, thank you. Even though it's a development meeting, try and avoid acronyms, right? So it's always good to, because you may have varying levels of people with different backgrounds in the meeting. Some, a lot more senior to you who may not be experienced with the coding and the languages and the terminology. Like even when sometimes I talk to my kids when they're messaging me, I don't understand half of the acronyms they use, right? So be conscious of the fact that acronyms, keep the language basic. Whenever you're talking, consciously make an effort to keep the language basic. That doesn't mean that you keeping the language basic means that you don't know what you are. The more basic that you can keep the language, the better you are, as far as I'm concerned, right? So as they say, with anything that you do, if you can explain it in such a way that a child could understand, then you are truly successful with your communication, right? But if you explain it in a very complex thing in a way that a child could understand, so practice that. I'm sure all of you have younger siblings or cousins or friends with kids. Of course, talk to them, right? And practice this, right? Like think about something complicated and figure out how, and try and explain to them in language that they'll understand. This is a skill. This is a very important skill that the sooner you learn, the better, because this helps you articulate your knowledge in the most effective way, right? So communication is not just text or voice, right? What else do you think forms communication? Maybe you guys can type, or I'm happy to hear. I'll pause for a minute and drink some water to get my voice going. So what do you think is communication, like other than text or voice? Have I lost everyone already? Oh man, it's not just started. Good, being able to express your opinions clearly. Yes. Anyone else have? Please, I would like to have more interaction from you guys, right? Remember, this is a non-technical, meaning you all have to interact. If I was here doing a technical thing and you sit and listen, is a different story, but we are here doing non-technical. So you have to interact with me. Emotions, tone and body language, very good. So it goes back to exactly what Kasuni said, right? Tone and body language are absolutely paramount when it comes to communication. And of course, emotions, face expressions. So they're not just watching you and they're not looking at you and listening to you or reading your text, right? They're actually looking at how you're speaking. What is your expression? Are you smiling? Are you angry? Do you have, like in sales, because I train sales teams, we also have simple things like never sit with your hands crossed, right? Sitting with your hands crossed implies you're a closed person. Very basic thing. When you sit in a table, sit with your hands open, right? So small things like that about your body language. Now, this is something that you can teach yourself. Express feelings. Yes, thank you. So it's something that you can do a bit of work on. Now, I know Miuni is doing psychology, so she knows what I'm talking about. But it's it's a big part of communicating is the non-verbal stuff, right? You should be able to basically keep your mouth shut and still get across what you're trying to say with your body language, right? And very important. Now, one thing I noticed is tech guys have zero body language, right? Like I've yet to meet a tech guy that has good body language, right? Of course, you see people from other industry, managers, non-technical people. The most common you would see would salespeople, right? Their body language. Yes, thumbs down. Yes, so it's very important that you need to learn the art of body language, right? Like so that when you communicate, you actually talk, you express that along with facial expressions, how your body moves, how you sit on a table. Are you fidgeting with stuff when you're actually talking about things? Are you shaking your legs? These are things that others are watching, right, while you're communicating. And it speaks a lot for, so you could be trying to get out something that is revolutionary, but just because you delivered it wrong and your body language or your communication was off, someone doesn't take it seriously, or they don't understand the value in it, right? So there are plenty of videos on YouTube that you can look at. Just sort of go in there and put body language, and I'm sure there'll be many that you can actually look at and learn. It's about upskilling yourself, right? So active listening and empathy, right? So of course these are two words that are quite important. When you're listening, actually listen. Not listening, no, you're physically there in front of the person, but your mind is like somewhere else. That is passive listening, right? So actively listen. When you actually, someone is saying something to you, be in the moment and actually listen, right? So that is another crucial skill that you need to learn. Try to switch off whatever is actually going on and be in the moment, be in the conversation by actually listening to whatever that person is saying word for word. And while you're listening, pay attention to the body language, right? So these are two things that you go hand in hand, will help you make sure that you communicate to the other person that you're actually genuinely interested in what they're saying, right? So that communication part, as I said, it ties in many things together. So as the blue text here says, the project updates is yep and LOL. Of course, that means that you literally need to talk, right? The third thing, emotional intelligence. So a few of you actually highlighted here emotions when it came to communication, right? It's good that you brought that up, right? And I'm happy to see that, because that's, again, another important non-technical thing that you need to take grasp of. What is the level of your emotional intelligence, right? Recognizing your emotions. How are you feeling when you're stressed, right? How are you feeling when someone's giving you feedback that you don't like, right? Like that element of things, keeping the emotions in check, having a good level of emotional intelligence is key, right? And empathy, right? Like you guys know all what empathy means, right? Like it's basically just understanding and relating to the other person's situation, right? If you want to put it in simple terms. Now, empathy from a product perspective, you always talk about empathy, basically from the teammates, and empathy from the users, right? So let's say someone's using our hotel software, someone calls in and they're absolutely frustrated. It's no fault of the software, right? But they are actually calling in because they're not able to do something which is really challenging them. They're going to be upset, right? They're going to be upset. They're going to call and shout at you. Hey, I'm not able to do this. I'm really frustrated. Your software is crap, right? So the person on the other side, you probably do this when you call a bank and your card is not working or you can't do a transaction, right? What happens on the other side? The person empathizes with you, right? They say, I'm so sorry, sir. I'm really sorry about the frustration that you're going through. Let me help you, right? Empathizing with the situation. Now, that is not only when it comes to users, it's also your teammates that you're working with. Empathizing with them, right? Who knows what they are going through, what situation they are going through, and what the background is that led them to that situation. So when they're going through a tough time, empathize with them, right? Understand how you can be relating to them and helping them in that process. So another very important thing when it comes to looking at your emotional intelligence level. So having a high EQ or emotional intelligence number is basically going to result in you having a lot lower drama and help you make better decisions. And this is quite important for you to develop your emotional intelligence and work on it, right? So this is two things. Sometimes EQ or high emotional intelligence means not rage pushing to main at 2 a.m. Okay, that's also an emotional intelligence element, right? Why would I write code and who knows what's happening at 2 a.m., right? If I write it to a point and then push it, what's going to happen after that? So that's another thing to look at. Interestingly, a lot of you did. I saw one post on adaptability as your superpower, and boy, happy to know, boy or girl, happy to say that that is exactly one of the things that you actually need to be working on as far as non-technical things are concerned, right? Now, you know that tech shifts very fast, languages change frequently, frameworks change, org charts change. There's a lot of change, right? So how good are you at adapting to change? Now, that is one thing that tech people are very good at, adapting, because the change is so much, it's so drastic, right? So now I must say there are as you get older, as you start putting on a bit of experience, what I've noticed with practically having worked in this in the tech industry now for more than 20 years is as you get older, you don't your flexibility reduces, your adaptability reduces, right? And that's when it becomes a problem, right? Because you've got now people working with you, under you, who are more agile, more adaptable, and they're able to do a lot more because you are not willing to take the effort, right? Be comfortable with ambiguity, right? Be comfortable with, and that is going to be the greatest thing in your career that will help you be a step above the rest. Be comfortable with being uncomfortable, simply put, right? If you're comfortable with being uncomfortable, if you're comfortable with the unknown, that's going to be your biggest advantage. So don't take comfort in where you are. Always be willing to challenge yourself and push yourself, right? And that's another thing that is important. Be very resilient. Don't be rigid. Your resilience has to be a lot greater than your rigidity, right? Being rigid, being stuck in your ways, being specifically doing things one way is not going to help you at all with progression, right? Build resilience, and by building resilience, you reduce your rigidity. Of course, the most common thing that happens, new framework gets dropped. Hey, I'm rewriting my code all over again. Adaptability, right? There are some smart techies that I work with, some smart coders that I work with that write their code in a way that helps them with adaptability down the track. So when it comes to a new framework being brought in, it doesn't come as a surprise, right? So being adaptable or writing in a way, doing what you're doing in a way that makes you adaptable. One of the most difficult things that I've had challenges with in the tech industry is time management, right? Very, very simply put, oh, I've got this feature that this customer really wants, explain it to them in detail, and they say, yeah, I can have that ready in 1 week. And I know for a fact there's absolutely no chance in hell that it can be done in 1 week, even if we had everybody in the company working on that one bit of code. Never, ever, ever be optimistic with your estimations. Be realistic, right? Like always be on the safe side. It's always better to overpromise and underdeliver. No, it's always better to do what you need to do, but being optimistic doesn't really help when you're giving an estimate with time, right? Now, when it comes to prioritizing, now this is another skill that you guys really have to learn is prioritization. And prioritization does not mean one guy or one team member. So when you're working as a coder, as a tech person, be it in actually writing as a developer or as a tester. And you're working in a product company or you're working in a project, you'll find the testers or the field guys that are actually doing the onboarding and the implementation. They'll keep coming and telling you, hey, this is not working, that is not working, right? Now, the most common thing that I've found is the ability not knowing how to prioritize, right? So priority, as far as most developers is concerned, is the guy that comes and makes the most amount of noise to you is the one that gets the first attention. That is not priority, right? It's knowing what is urgent and what is important, right? So being able to basically work that out is a skill that you have to learn, and that's going to take you a long place. And always very important, right? You can't work when someone's nagging at you all the time, right? So you have to plan. So let's say someone comes and gives you a task to do, right? Planning it in such a way that you put that time aside for your deep work, right? Where you know that any disturbance from anyone is going to kill your complete drive and it's going to kill your momentum, right? So these are things that you can practice even right now at university when you're doing your project. These are some things that you can practice: managing your time, right? Prioritizing things, actually projecting time to do that more intense work as well. Time blocking only works until Netflix sends a new trailer. That's another. So you can't let anything distract you, right? So actually being able to manage the time. Framing a problem. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. Now, again, always another thing that happens is it's not about solving it as fast as you can, right? Like nobody expects you to write code and give a result in an insane amount of time, which doesn't make sense. But it's more important that you learn to understand quicker than you write code, right? So if it is the other way around, then we've got a problem, right? So understanding first, developing an understanding, and that understanding is very crucial. Like putting yourself in a situation where you are able to understand and interpret, right? What is going on, not just by what someone is telling you, but just by also trying to visualize yourself and put yourself in that position. Asking a simple question: what is the goal? What is the goal of what you're trying to get me to do? Right? When someone says we need to write some code for a particular task, what is the goal here? Right? Don't be shy to ask about it, because at the end of the day, if you know that there is something greater in mind than what you've been told, you will structure what you're doing in a way to suit the greater goal, right? It's as simple as that. So always be willing to ask, what is the actual goal, and understand and spend the time in the understanding, right? Clarifying why and not just the what. Why are you asking me to do this? What is the reason for this? Not just what is the reason, but why, right? Why is it supposed to be this way? Asking the why questions more is also quite important than just doing what you're told to do, right? This is another important thing when it comes to framing your problems. And it is a common thing that happens, and it happened many times where I've worked in both places. We are working so hard on something, we work for 2 weeks, and we realize that there was a problem that nobody ever had, right? We've come up with some hypothetical scenario when in an actual use case, it actually would have never happened. But we found a solution for that. So this is where that asking those questions is so important, understanding things is so important, so you don't end up in a situation where we wasted 2 weeks on solving something which wasn't a problem. Always be willing to grow, right? Mistakes are feedback loops in your language. So of course, you don't want to be making the same mistakes again and again. It's simple. You will learn from your mistakes, adapt yourself, and move on. And it's totally okay to fail. There's nothing wrong with failing, right? You try something and fail. But the important thing is to learn from it, right? If you do the same thing again and again, you're a fool if you do the same mistake again and again, right? You really have to be able to be in a position to learn from your mistakes, come up with a solution, figure that out, know, and then move on. And going back again, this is very simple things that I'm telling you. It's not rocket science, but you will be surprised how these are such big problems in the work environment, which you're going to be seeing. Right. And now with me talking about this, you're starting to prepare yourself to actually be in a position to start thinking about this now, which is quite crucial, right? Always celebrating progress. So even when you're doing your assignments, projects, don't only celebrate when the job is done, right? Celebrate every moment and step that you take to achieve what's big, right? And it's quite crucial, like celebrating each of the progress steps that you've taken to reach the end result. And the end result is going to be even more sweeter when you're celebrating the progress along the way. So always be conscious of rewarding yourself by celebrating progress, and not just you and your teammates, through collaboration and communication. Curiosity always scales better than confidence, right? So sure, you can be confident about something and say, no, this is not this is 100% right. I'm not at fault here. I'm sure you can be confident about it, but always be curious. Always be curious about something that you think may not be right, or something that you need to look into more, right? That curiosity is something that is so vital, right? Particularly in the tech industry. Now, it's always important to understand what real world problems you're solving, right? Like, are you actually doing something that's making a difference? The code that you write, what is it actually doing out there? Now, you'll be surprised to know, in the 10 years that I've worked with this hospitality tech company, up until I joined, so this company was running for 13 years prior to me joining. So after I joined, one of the first things I did was took the tech team out to a hotel. So for 13 years, they were writing code and they didn't know how it was used in a hotel. So knowing what you're writing and how it's actually being used is going to be game changing for you, right? Like, because it'll give you a different perspective, which you never thought, right? What is in your mind is definitely not going to be how the product or the code or the end result will actually be used in the real world, right? So understanding the application of that, again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about understanding, right? Always be quick to understand, not quick to code. So this, always when you're working on something, ask, can I go and see this in action somewhere? Can I see how it is used? Go to, like, if you're writing code for a hotel, go to a check-in desk, stand behind the counter in the check-in desk, look at what the guy is doing while he's checking a guest in. Go to a restaurant, look at how the waiter is coming out and taking your order. How is he punching? How is he using the code that you wrote? Right? So this understanding of the real world is so important. So it helps you code without having blinders on. And of course, the ultimate, it's not a bug, it's a feature of my learning curve. So that's that's another thing that always gets me. Common pitfalls. Many a time have I met a programmer that says, I'm really good at what I do. My code speaks for itself. That's one of the things that you should never be in a position to do or talk about, how good your code is just because someone's looking at it. Sure, it's going to be a factor, but it's not going to be what defines you. It's not going to be what helps you progress in the career that you're going. So very important. I'm sure there might be some kickback on this. I don't see any comments, so maybe that is, hopefully I'll have more comments. It'd be good to get more comments from you guys as well on these topics. Keen to know if you think that your code is good enough to speak for itself. I don't think it is, but you could challenge me. Yeah, that's one thing that always you need to be conscious of. Having an ego. I was able to work with many. I come from an engineering technical background. I was able to work with many different departments in the company, but the one that I found the most challenging was development, right? Because anything I said, any feedback that I gave, always hit them like personally. For some reason, they always took everything like personally. They didn't think about it, because after some time, as you start programming and as you get into the workforce and you start building things, you start getting this bit of ego, like, my code is very good. Why is someone questioning my code or my abilities? You start building this thing about yourself, which is not good, right? So again, the curiosity element is important, and getting the ability to take constructive feedback without, as I was saying in the start, throwing a chair through the window, right? Or the door. So being able to take that feedback in good spirit, even though it sometimes may be condescending and destructive, but at the same time, understanding the value in it and having the right perspective when you're actually taking that feedback is also crucial. Perfectionism. Perfectionism. I've got an equation here for perfectionism. It's procrastination with a badge. So just thinking, pausing. Oh, is this right? 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 It's never going to be perfect, right? So sure, you want to work on something that's perfect, but at the same time, you don't want to procrastinate too long either, right? So something to again think about when it comes to your pitfalls. Good. This is a good one. Goes back to that first point. Letting your work speak for itself only works if your work can talk back in stand-ups. Now, in the stand-up, your work is not the one that's doing the talking. You are. So yes, sure. Maybe you get to a point where you write something that can speak for itself in a stand-up. Then yes, then there's something that you can come back to me on and correct me once you start your careers. I've got a few resources. We're getting to the tail end now, that I would like to share with you. I do hope you guys like to read, right? Like this is something interesting that I think you guys will benefit from. A few books that you can benefit from, which are what I've listed here. Just getting my notes. So here we've got Radical Candor, Atomic Habits, and Deep Work. So please take a picture of these, get these books. Radical Candor is like a story about how to be a boss without losing your humanity. It's quite an interesting book, and it's written by a well-known exec from Apple and Google, Kim Malone Scott. I've partially started getting into it now, and it's quite an interesting book, something that you should read, because obviously humanity is a big part of tech, right? And this will help you. Atomic Habits, again, something that you also find quite interesting. It's about habit formation and how you can accomplish more by focusing on less. Now, it might seem contradictory, but something that I'm very passionate about: routine and habits. See, sometimes when you train yourself so much with habits, you realize that you don't have to focus much energy on that, right? So this book talks a little bit about that. So I strongly encourage you get a copy as well. And of course, deep work. So basically, deep work is a lot about how to make yourself rare, how to make yourself increasingly rare. And as you know, in tech, the rarer you are, the rarer your skill set is, the more valuable you are, right? So this is a book that talks more about that. Of course, there are some other tools that you can look at: Notion, Forest, Clockwise, and Loom. So of course, these are tools that actually will help you with your day-to-day stuff, with your work. So again, look those up. I'd like you guys to also try this out. I'm trying Forest out and Clockwise. These are two new tools that I've found out about that I'm looking at. Also, a lot of podcasts that you can listen to, work life. Of course, A16Z is one of the top VCs in the world. They actually invest a lot in tech, and they have a very good podcast that you can actually listen to get more. And of course, Code Newbie, which would be great for you guys as well. Now, I would like you guys to be serious about your contribution, right? Like, how much or how many of you, I'll be curious to know, since I can have a break and see some typing, but how many of you guys have written open source stuff? Would you like to share what you've written, anything in open source that you've contributed? Nobody? You can type if you feel shy to speak. But again, it's important that you start this process early, right? Contribute code, contribute knowledge. And as I was saying one thing earlier about how sharing of knowledge is important. So pick an open source project, do some work, spend some of your time in your week doing some open source project work, right? Look for obviously internships, things that can actually help you on your journey. And with your internships, I would highly recommend you look at internships that will give you non-technical skills. Technical skills you can learn, But non-technical skills, actually, you need from practice, right? And it's not going to come by you sitting at home doing your projects. It has to come with you out and about, and that's quite crucial with the non-technical skills, right? Participate in as many hackathons as you can, right? Like I think that's a very, very, very important thing that you can do for yourself. When I started my second project, so while I was working with a hospitality company, this was in 2021, I started a crypto project with my brother. So we actually worked on a crypto project together. It's a data project where we actually built some tech on the blockchain using Web3 and, of course, blockchain. And for this, how we actually, so the project started by us actually taking part in hackathons. So all we used to do was in the early journeys, build some tech and take part in hackathons, So there were about 10 hackathons that we participated in that brought a lot of recognition, right? Like because we participated in these hackathons. And as a result of that, that showed that, of course, we have the persistence to continue on and do more. So hackathons are crucial. Whatever opportunity that you get, participate in any hackathon that you can get your hands on. Learn, because it's a wonderful opportunity to collaborate. You'll get to meet a lot of others with similar passions as you. Collaborate together and work on a project, and or at the same time. So there's a couple of videos online as well where we sponsored some hackathons, and there's some pretty amazing stuff that gets built at hackathons. So make that effort and participate in hackathons. Yeah. Okay, so just to wrap up, what are you all going to build now? Having listened to my 1 or so hour of talking, how are you going to now make use of this, right? Now, you got to remember that you can't master all of this at one go. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of effort on your part. But all I'm here to remind you of is the fact that you need to equally do things. Don't only focus on the tech and building your tech skills. You need to consciously work on building your non-tech skills. And that's what I'm here to remind you of. That's what makes a successful person, not a person that only knows how to code, but a person that can balance the coding with the non-technical skills. And these are the ones that make brilliant CTOs. You know, the C-level stuff, if you look at them, they have a very good way of articulating things and speaking things out, not just the coding part. So you want to be building your career up to a point where you get there and not just end up in a situation where you're just purely coding. So make a conscious effort to pick one of these skills that I've just highlighted to you and practice it. Now, if you want to practice it on me, I'm more than happy to be your sounding board to practice on, right? So I'm always happy to do stuff for you, give you guidance, be there for you, but you need more practice. The more practice you get, the better you get at it, obviously, right? So these are career accelerators, not just add-ons, right? So basically, we know that these things are going to get you up the chain or up the ladder within wherever you're going to go as fast as possible, right? You may find that you may be technically brilliant, but if you don't have a good mix of these skills, these non-technical skills, your journey is going to be hindered a lot. You're not going to see that progress. You're not going to have that accelerant, right? You're not going to have the fuel that will actually keep pushing you to the higher rungs. And I hope that the first non-technical skill that you learn is not replying to emails. Because it's another challenge that I've always had, sending an email to the developers, nothing comes back, right? And of course, I hope this is not you. All right, that's about brings me to the end of my session. I hope you all benefited from it. Now, I would like to obviously open out to you, all of you guys, to connect with me on LinkedIn. All you need to do is scan the QR code here. That is one non-technical skill that you have to learn right now is LinkedIn, right? I want you all to be spending, as much media as you spend on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. Now I learned that a lot of you are on Facebook. As much time as you spend on any of these other platforms, you should be spending on LinkedIn. Because LinkedIn is the future in terms of your career, your progression. There's a lot you can learn. So if you go to the LinkedIn Learning part, inside LinkedIn, there's a lot you can learn about the soft skills that I just spoke about, right? How to develop those skills. There are a lot of wonderful LinkedIn learning programs that go through those different points that I talked about. And I hope that you will spend some time, connect with me. I help out a lot of people looking for jobs, right? So that's another thing that I wanted to highlight to you. I volunteer for a program here run in Dubai by my church, actually, called Job Seekers, where we actually help people looking for jobs. We help them fix their CVs up. We help them, basically get better at LinkedIn, how to network, how to attend an interview, all these sorts of things. So I actually am a volunteer in that, and I do that once a month. So I'm happy to obviously help you guys as much as possible. But the only way that I'd like to communicate with you is on LinkedIn, because I want you to get very comfortable with it. So once again, thank you all for your time. I appreciate you taking time on a Saturday evening to come out and talk to me. Um, Wish you all the very best with your exams and whatever else that's going on in your life. I know you got great careers ahead of you. Look at me, look at what a Sri Lankan has done. I want you to use me as an example and know that if I can do it better, right? So thank you very much. I hand it over to you guys.
That was an incredible session, Mr. Praveen. We have time for questions. If anybody has any questions that they'd like to direct at Praveen,
Oh, come on, guys! I'd love to hear some questions
or even feedback about
or even
today's
feedback.
session.
Exactly. Thank you. If you think I can do this better, I'd love to know, because this is the first time I've done it. So I'd love to get your feedback on what you think I can do to make it better. If you don't feel comfortable sending it to me here, feel free to message me on LinkedIn. I'd love to get some feedback.
Hi, Praveen.
Hey,
Thank you for the really amazing session. I wanted to ask, what are the most important non-technical skills for business analyst?
good question. Good question. I mean, it's all more or less going to boil down to what I just spoke to, Savinu, right? So it's the communication aspect, right? Business analysts have to communicate a lot, right? When they're analyzing a particular business case, they have to communicate a lot. So that element of being able to communicate, quickly understand things, right? Figure out what a problem is and how to solve it, because you're like the bridge, right? So you're the bridge between the non-technical and the technical. So you need to have a good understanding of both. And all of what I've just told you are skills that you need to work on. So of course, you'd like to pick the communication skill to work on first. Then you need like to pick on the problem solving and those other elements as well that actually come along with that. But again, LinkedIn Learning, I can just point you to that. If you just put in business analyst on LinkedIn Learning, you will find a wealth of information on some courses that you can actually take. And as a student, I believe you do get a pretty good rate, if not a heavily subsidized rate. So it's something that you could definitely look at to improve your skill set. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Praveen.
Any more questions or feedback, guys?
Quiet.
Bit
So
of
I
a
hope
shy
all of
audience.
yeah, I hope all of you have connected with me. Please, if you scan that code, you can connect with me. So that's why I'm leaving that up on the screen before I take that off. Or you can reach out to, I guess, whoever ran this course if you need to connect with me as well.